This is Chuck Sachs for Indie Opera Podcast, and I'll be talking with composer, creator, and performer Jeremy Schoenfeld and director Kevin Newberry about the multimedia rock opera Iron and Coal being produced as part of Prototype Festival 2020 at the Gerald W. Lynch Theater on January 10th and 11th. Hello, gentlemen. How are you doing?
Great, thank you. How are you?
Great, thanks for having us.
Well, you've actually had an opening, and Kevin's not even here with us because he's in Houston directing La Favorite with Jamie Barton. So, how did last night go?
I guess we have to give him a pass for that one, right?
Yes, we do. I mean, I'd be happily doing La Favorite with Jamie Barton.
I know, talk about an embarrassment of riches to go from Jeremy and Prototype to Jamie and Houston Grande. It's a good director's life. I can't complain.
Well, we appreciate it. Kevin actually only came in for like a little less than 24 hours, but he did manage to get in to help us, and it was tremendously helpful. Mm-hmm. Last night was really wonderful. It really truly was. It's amazing how wonderful things can come together quickly when you have such incredible collaborators. So I was very, very proud.
Well, now, Jeremy, your father's memoir, Absence of Closure, was published in 2009. What created the impetus in you to begin creating this work of music theater from that?
Well, I had known probably for many, many years as a composer and a songwriter that I had something I needed to say about the subject matter, about growing up amongst all of these voices, these accents that no longer exist. And I just didn't know when I was ready to embark on that journey. In 2008, as my father was creating the memoirs, he had been sick. We didn't know exactly how sick, but he called and let me know and let his other children know that he was going on a double-blind study for a new medicine to help him with his myelofibrosis. Which ended up being the thing that killed him. And for a doctor who administered those kinds of tests, a scientist who administered those kind of tests in his career, we knew that it meant that he was down to the prayer option in a way. Mm-hmm. So I kind of felt a little bit of a fire to really get moving and to do something. And he was doing his book. He was sending me words, pages, and things to look at. And I thought, well, maybe I should try to musicalize his memoirs, but I realized pretty quickly that that was more his job. Mm-hmm. He was the one who tells his story. Mm-hmm. I took away the idea of linear storytelling and started to write based on sort of the emotions and the things that I experienced or that I witnessed others who were around me, survivors, experiencing. And I realized I'd created something. Many songs I'd written years before, but mm-hmm. I hadn't really known that I was writing for this project. Mm-hmm. And it occurred to me that I had come up with sort of a parallel journey of a father who survived the war through to the birth of his son, and then simultaneously a son who is mourning the death of his father and trying to come out from under the shadows of Auschwitz.
Wow. Now, when and how did you and Kevin meet and decide to begin working together on Iron and Coal?
Well, it's actually been a fairly long, serendipitous journey. I've known Jeremy for probably 15 years now, and I remember sitting in his living room and him playing me the Iron and Coal album when he first recorded it, and it was just something that stayed with me. And then a few years later, we kind of lost touch for a couple of years because I was traveling around the country, and I'm so hard to pin down to have coffee and drinks with. And then at one moment we kind of reconnected, and then we decided to do a kind of reading of it with my friend, our mutual friend and collaborator David Bloom, genius music director and arranger. Yeah. And we did a kind of big reading of it at National Sawdust, and Beth Morrison came to see it there. She had been a fan of Jeremy's and fell in love with it, and then we just kept working on it, and one thing led to another. We had a great workshop where we decided to break down the story and include aspects of Jeremy's dad's memoir, and then it came together fairly quickly. So with a little maybe 5 or 6 year hiatus between when I first heard the album and when we began working on it in earnest, and then it feels like almost overnight it turned into what we're doing a prototype right now.
So that was 2016 at National Sawdust, right?
Yeah, it was December.
Yeah, that's right,
December.
And since then, the piece has was performed in 2018?
Yeah, this was really This tonight will actually really only be the fourth public performance of the piece. We did 2016 when we did the original concert. It was just me singing the album with the multimedia and stuff, and many of the things that we had developed, and with David and contemporaneous and with choir. But it wasn't until after that where we sort of embarked on this journey of adding an older and a younger father, and having using the excerpts from my father's memoirs, and we were given another person who was also instrumental, my friend Joy Brown from the Strathmore, who had also been following the piece and asked about it. Just perfect timing. Asked about it and said, I'd love to be a part of this. I think Kevin, if I'm not mistaken, we'd already had the National Stardust thing planned.
Right.
And so she came in for that. Beth came in for that, and then everybody got together and said, okay, we need to make this happen. So we were able to jump some steps to really get from there.
What was Joy's part in this?
Strathmore was the co-producer on the original production, and they were. I think they have an annual production that they co-produce something, or they try to bring something in that they can bring their resources and their community into. And this was the perfect fit. Biggest thing they'd ever done, but it was a wonderful. I think a wonderful moral and emotional success, if maybe not as much of a financial one, but it was still a wonderful, wonderful thing.
And then there were concerts in Europe, or was that?
I recorded the original album in Vienna in 2011, and I was given an opportunity to perform music from the album in two different occasions, one for the opening ceremonies of the first Maccabee Games to be produced after the former Third Reich country in Vienna, and then I also through Excelarte, an organization led by Gerard Gruber at the University of Vienna, I was able to perform the album for a wonderful crowd there too. But it was very different than what we've created.
So then, since 2016 and National Sawdust, when Kevin officially kind of came on, how much has changed on this project since then?
I mean, quite a bit has changed actually. We had the songs are pretty much the same. There were a couple that we took out, and Jeremy wrote two brand new songs that are really kind of the central to the narrative of the piece. And the workshop we did in New York, I also want to point out that we brought Rindy Eckert on, who plays the older version of Jeremy's dad, the legendary Rindy Eckert, and he was a big part of that workshop as well. So we sat in a room together, Jeremy, David Bloom, Beth, Joy, Rindy, and myself, and we went through Jeremy's dad's book, and we looked at different excerpts. We decided fairly early on to add the younger father and make it sort of like the triumvirate of the three of them with the choir and band in the background. And the shape and structure the piece has now is fairly close to what we did in that very intense 5 days. I remember going out for whiskey in Manhattan with David and Jeremy when we kind of cracked the end of the piece, and it was just a really joyful, moving experience, and I think we really made the piece that we wanted to make.
Yeah, I agree.
So what are the elements of multimedia that are in the piece?
Well, I had been given a commission from a synagogue in Brooklyn, a congregation Beth Elohim, to create for a concert that unfortunately never happened. But the cantor, named Cantor Josh Breitzer, who does get a little bit of a shout out in the piece, I will say. But Cantor Breitzer was a big fan of the work and asked me if I would do this concert, and gave me a commission to work on some of this multimedia, which for me included animation based on the original artwork by Tom Seltzer. I had always known that I wanted to do some sort of a performance of the piece in full that involved some sort of either whether it was movement or multimedia, whatever it was. We also brought in our choreographer and Kevin's assistant director, Natalie Lamont, and she originally created a lot of movement that we filmed. And I sort of put all this together with another friend who was also instrumental in the piece, Paul Vershbow. And we sat there and we cut and pasted various family archival footage and photographs and multimedia creations that brilliant Tom had done. and sort of just looked at those as songs and individual pieces, almost as in music videos. And Kevin came in as we were doing that and started doing what Kevin does, which is amazing. He just kind of zeroes in very, very quickly and says, no, yes, maybe. And then it all happens very fast with great energy. And we started, and we ended up, cutting away a lot of the fat. But the process, I think, of doing that kind of work was really instrumental in being able to kind of take a look at what the potential was for multimedia in the piece.
And so, cast-wise, we have Rindy Eckert, we have you. Who else? I know we have Contemporaneous, which is David Bloom's orchestral ensemble.
Yes. And David is such a key player as well, because not only is he a brilliant musician and conductor, but he's so theatrical as a conductor and musician, and he's really a kind of central voice in this too. And we had a wonderful actor named Lincoln Klaus who played the young dad for us at Strathmore, and he wasn't available to do it here in New York, and so I brought on my good friend and collaborator Daniel Rowan, who is knocking it out of the park. So Daniel and Jeremy and Rindy sound like they could actually be related. It's pretty incredible. Yeah. And then we have the Brooklyn Youth Choir and the Master Voices Adult Choir to round out the ensemble.
So, it's a large group backing you up.
Yeah, it is a large group. It's a large piece. I likened it to sort of a combination of Bernstein's Mass and The Wall. Sort of, you put those two together, and I don't. That's not accurate creatively, but in a sense, it's got very rock, very orchestral, and it wants to be big.
I was saying too. I think as you both know, I do Bernstein's Mass all over the country, and it really does feel like Bernstein's Mass meets The Wall. It has such a spiritual center to it. It involves a lot of people. At Strathmore, we brought in even more community members. The piece can get as big as we want it to be, or it can also work intimately around the piano. That's what's so special. I don't know very many pieces, if any, that can work with one person at a piano or a few people around the piano or 300 musicians and singers. It kind of has the same effect in both ways.
Thank you, Kevin.
Well, I don't think you're too wrong pairing mirroring yourself after Bernstein's Mass, which is it is true genius. And I think finally in the past decade it is getting its due. Yeah. There's still music critics out there.
Our production for Ravinia is going to be on PBS next year, so you have to check it out.
I can't wait. I've seen most of the ones in New York, and I liked Marin Alsop's. I won't say much more about the one that was more recently.
Well, I directed Marin, as you may know, so I appreciate that.
Yeah. Yes. Well, it's also one of the few female conductors near Mass, and she's been one of the early female conductors out there too.
Well, Marin conducted the one at Ravinia that's going to be on TV that we just did twice as well. So Marin and I have been doing that for over a decade now together. It's really exciting.
So, what do you hope is the future for this piece after this?
I told the audience last night. I was asked this. We had a talk back. A lot of people stayed. It was really lovely. And someone asked that, and of course I sort of deflected the question to Jacka Berry, one of our producers, to answer. But after I know that there's an obvious plan for touring and for doing various performances, and however many. I'm happy to do it. But I also mentioned to the audience that for me. When I created this album, my father died the day the album was mastered.
Wow.
So I never got to celebrate the album, and it was for many years. It was very hard to even listen to it. Really, it just sort of sat there. And so what I told Kevin when we did Strathmore, and I said the same thing last night. If just the idea that I would be able to do something of that magnitude. With so many incredible collaborators, with Kevin, and just to be able to sit there and appreciate it and be grateful for it, I was fine if that was the only time we ever did it. So the idea that we did it again last night and again tonight it just sort of extends that gratitude. So for me, if this was it, I'd be happy. That being said, I'm more than happy, and I know everybody would like this to be something that we get to do many times over.
Well, because it sounds like it's a work that can go into the community, engage community artists.
Yes.
With the choirs, the youth choirs and the adult choirs. and would be perfect for, some of the huge synagogues that have those forces.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. I want to go for a world empathic domination here, right? I want to take this piece everywhere because it's exactly, it's as exciting as it is to have a hit and be doing it in a place like New York. When you do these pieces around the country in communities that don't have as much access in some ways to music in the same way, when we do Bernstein's Mass, I keep using that as a comparison. I watch it change people's lives, not only the audience, but the choirs, especially the kids that are involved. And I think that people are craving this kind of piece about empathy and connection and intergenerational, institutional, family memory, all of that stuff. I think it's exactly what audiences are craving right now. And I really want to see it have a long life and be intimately involved in that journey, and whether it's traveling around the country in a smaller version of it, but I want to aim big. I want to involve lots of people and reach as many hearts and minds as possible.
But it's important in this day and age, considering we have further Holocaust deniers out there. What's going on in our own country with the white fascists and the white nationalists is insane. Just like Bernstein's Mass breaks open for people how they look at religion and how that affects them, how they profess their religion, how they interact with their religion, and how it becomes or isn't part of their life. And it sounds like this piece is, because it comes down to the personal level, what people need to get through their minds. Oh, this is real. This happened to people.
And it's
and I think at its heart, it's really obviously a father and son journey too,
right?
And in a way, a father, son, and grandson. And I think anybody who has a parent, which is everyone in the world, can relate to this piece. And I think it's one of the challenges in marketing it is it's not like it's the Holocaust rock musical. Doesn't sound like something you want to run and buy a ticket to. And so it's interesting when you watch audiences within the first 5 minutes, they realize they're seeing something that they could never have anticipated and didn't expect. And I think I find when I watch it, not only am I thinking about all of the ways that I could have been locked up and killed during the Nazi years for being queer and being subversive, but I'm not Jewish, but so many of my friends and collaborators are, of course, but I think about my own parents and about what they went through and what I've inherited from them and from the generation before. And it just feels very personal. That's why the piece works so much, because it's a personal story set against a kind of epic political backdrop.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree. It's for me, I really wanted to work from the emotional, and I there are certain emotions, certain anxieties, depressions, fears that are that bond survivors and survivors' kids. They're not unique only to us, but they are definitely something that we share. And then there's just the idea of living up to your parents and to your grandparents, and the feeling of what it means when they're gone, and whether you had that chance to reach across time and find out if they were proud of you, if you did well by them. I think that's a universal truth that that's for me that's a very important part of this piece, and I hope that people, when they come into this piece, they aren't scared away by the by that subject matter, but they really are. They do embrace the idea that that's really the main focus of this piece from an emotional standpoint.
Well, I want to thank you both for sitting down with me. I'm excited to see the piece tonight. And
you're going tonight? How wonderful. I am. To hear your thoughts.
And I really do hope it has a bigger, further journeys.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Well, thank you for chatting with us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And Jeremy, have a great show tonight.
Thanks, Kevin. We'll try.
And on behalf of my guest artists and Indie Opera Podcast, thanks for listening.